Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me once again. Today we're going to ask how ancient phenomena turned into symbols, pointing out to the gods and the goddesses. We know that in the ancient world, including in polytheistic religions today, people are using different statues to point out to the gods. They represent them, they symbolize them. But in early days in Mesopotamia, in Canaan, in the Levant, we see a very interesting phenomena which is still present today. Not only statues become symbols or representations of the divine, of different goddesses and the gods, also different symbols are taking place as the things that mark them and their presence. For example, stars or serpents or lightnings or perhaps even the rain, and then it could also become something more abstract like a string or a certain color. So why is this phenomena happening? What researchers assume today is that at some point, people felt that statues do not represent the gods in a way that respect them because it doesn't show enough of how much power they have. Statues aren't enough. They do not show how powerful the gods are. So what they started to do is to link them with certain phenomena in nature that they believe they're responsible for them. For example, Zeus with the lightnings, the weather, or perhaps goddesses of fertility such as Astaroth or Venus with bright stars. Or perhaps goddesses of war and wisdom and strategy like Anat or Athena with birds of prey. In Israel, in ancient Canaan, we see very two interesting places that present this phenomena in a more primordial way. We have a very ancient temple in the desert, in the south part of Israel, called the Temple of Leopards. What you see there is female leopards that are turning to the sun, to the sunrise, and their tails are up. On the opposite, you find deers, and they are sometimes headless and they're turning to the west, to the sundown. Researchers suggest that those leopards are representing ancient fertility goddesses, earth goddesses, that are facing the light and can bring life. They can also decide to take something from you, and so they create a circle of life and death. The deers are headless because they're already in the phase of death, but because the deers and the leopards are there together, facing both the sunrise and the sundown, they create a circle of life. So the deers and the leopards are becoming symbols connected to different qualities of the divine, of those goddesses. In a different temple called Tel Arad that archaeologists today are still debating over, we see two pillars for insect in the entrance of the Holy of Holies. We know it was an ancient temple of the Israelites, and the fact that there are two pillars there speak perhaps about a dual divinity of a male and a female. For example, El and Asherah. And what I think is that the taller one represented the male and the shorter one represented the female, because it echoes the differences between male and female in reality. And from there on, we see this phenomena evolving. Statues of goddesses of love, sexuality, and war had stars as earrings or as necklaces, and they represented the beauty and their connection to Venus. So the star itself, especially the star of Venus, became a symbol of this goddess. And we start to see the symbol on jewelry that women wore, almost as amulets under the protection of the goddess, because this is her symbol. An interesting thing is that people make a wish when they see a falling star, when they see a bright object that is passing through the atmosphere and that we can see it. People believe that the gods or the goddesses are drifting through the heavens, and when they pass from one place to another, you can see their movements, and those movements are those falling stars. Or perhaps this is also a carriage or something that is taking them to a different place. But this means that now they're present, that they're very close to you because you can see them move. So if you are making a wish, it goes right to them. So when you see a falling star, when you see this bright object, this is the time to ask something from the gods or the goddesses. Lightnings are associated with gods of weather, usually the bringers of rain. Serpents are becoming symbols of fertility because they represent the goddess. And we see another involvement. For example, we know that the color turquoise was very sacred, especially to the goddesses, probably because ancient jewelry, ancient jewels were in this color. This is the kind of metal that you found in the desert. So it was very precious, it was expensive, so it must be royalty. So the goddess, they must wear jewelry in this color, and this color is becoming the color against the evil eye because it represents the goddesses. It also could lead to another thing, that monotheistic being born in this area do not think that you can represent the god or the goddess in a statue. The divine is something abstract, but it may have symbols. So we see the stars in different mystic learnings, and we see the serpents, and we can talk about the rain as a sign of blessing. So those connections are still there, but in a different way. But they could be pointing out to what happened in ancient cultures and that future religions embrace. And this is how you create a connection between a symbol and the divine. If I cannot find a way to describe a god or a goddess in a way which will be respectful and will show how powerful they are, I will connect them with a natural symbol that I think is important and reflecting something of their quality and ability. If there are symbols that are sacred to you, I would love for you to share them. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.